Hi, I'm Ashura, and welcome to the start of my classic loremaster journey through all of the Night Elf zones, beginning with Darkshore. This is a story-focused playthrough, which means that I'm going to be taking you through all of the quests, reading them out loud, talking about the lore and story that we learn, but more importantly, talking about background lore and context to give you a more complete idea of what's going on in this zone, since Classic doesn't really tell you what's going on, so I will. If you randomly stumbled across this and wonder why I'm starting with Darkshore instead of Teldrassil, it's a long story. Half that Teldrassil has a stupid amount of lore behind it to even understand what's going on in the quests in that zone, but I have put together a history of Teldrassil video that breaks it all down in case you are curious, though you don't need to know anything really about the story of Teldrassil to understand what's going on in Darkshore. Many of the classic zones are pretty non-linear and can basically be enjoyed as enclosed stories on their own. Now, normally I'd like to start with a little premise about the zone before we get into the quests, but there's not actually a lot of lore to Darkshore, at least not a lot that we won't learn in the quests. There's some stuff in the RPG, but the RPG isn't canon because it was decanonized some years ago, so it can't really be taken as actual canon lore. But if you are curious, pretty much all that the RPG tells us about Darkshore is that before the Sundering, when most of the Kalimdor continent was ruled by the Night Elf Empire, Darkshore was apparently one of the most prosperous regions. Probably because, as we'll find while questing through the zone, there's actually quite a large amount of Highborne ruins here. I think there's at least 4 to 5, if you count the Cataclysm ruin. And given that the Highborne were the upper caste of Night Elven nobility 10,000 years ago, I guess that would sort of make sense that this region would have in fact been prosperous, or at least home to a sizable number of really wealthy elves. I think the only other thing the RPG tells us that we don't really learn from this zone is that during the Third War, when the Burning Legion was encroaching on Nordrassil and Mount Hyjal, apparently all of the Night Elves living in Darkshore left to go to Hyjal to protect the World Tree, and then eventually afterward came back. Pretty much the only other background lore we know about Darkshore is from the Stormrage novel, in which we're told Darkshore gets its name from the odd mist that blankets everything, and that actually, Darkshore is mostly shunned by the Night Elves, and that pretty much all attempts to settle the region, other than Aberdeen, failed, with many of the regular inhabitants of the town being considered outcasts, other than the sentinels and druids present. And that's about it for the backstory of Darkshore. So, let's learn the rest of it. Let's just crack into the quests.
What brings you here?
Hostile moonkin roam in ever-increasing numbers to our east. They once were thought to be gentle, almost mystical creatures. While some continue to hold reverence for them, the safety of Aberdeen forces me to keep a more realistic view. I've received reports that moonkin are being drawn to a large red crystal along Darkshore's eastern mountain range. No one has any idea what that crystal is, or even if it really exists. I want you to locate it over there and report back to me what you find.
Goddess watch over you.
Greetings.
I'm devising a potion that requires rare mushrooms. Mushrooms that grow only in a certain cave. The cave lies behind Cliffspring Falls to the east and slightly north along mountains. I would go there myself, but I was advised by the Grove of the Ancients to stay away from that place. A venerable ally since the cave is the hiding place for a new evil in Darkshore. Please, gather the mushrooms for me, and while doing so, scout the cave to confirm the Ancients' fears.
Farewell.
Attention! A reward is being offered for the death of the Murloc Murkdeep. This foul beast is known to be responsible for the death of at least one sentinel and is suspected of causing the sinking of at least 2 cargo vessels in the waters off Darkshore. Murkdeep was last spotted at a hutted Murloc camp south of Aberdeen, and is thought to be protecting the huts there. Reward claims for this bounty should be claimed with Sentinel Glinda Nalshay in Aberdeen, the Aberdeen Village Council. I feel like the Village Council is another one of those things that is mentioned in literally one quest and then never again, but I think you sort of technically get to I don't want to say meet them, but there's Thunderous Wind Weaver over in that building over there who we're gonna grab a quest from, and he's basically like in charge of the council for this town. It's not really like the Council of the Forest in Teldrassil, which is mentioned in one quest, and then it's not clear who's on it, you never hear about it again, it means nothing.
Goddess bless you.
May Elune walk with you, Druid. The Temple of the Moon has come to help the troubled citizens of Aberdeen.
Go in peace.
Majestic sea creatures are known to launch themselves at the Darkshore coastline, beached there until they die. Lately, these beasts have been washing ashore in ever-increasing numbers. I've been sent here by the Temple of the Moon to investigate, but the presence of Murlocs along the water has made my research difficult. There's a giant creature washed ashore just south of Aberdeen that is ringed by the foul grey mist Murlocs. Could you go there and retrieve bones from the creature for our study?
Elune light your path.
Can I help you?
Hey, help me with my latest invention, the Buzz Box. You can talk to people far away. Maybe you've already seen them. They're boxes with levers on them. The only problem is they need constant maintenance. Each one suffers from a different problem, but I made a really smart decision. I placed each one near creatures that have the proper parts to fix that particular machine. Right now, Buzzbox 827 is on the fritz. It's just south of Aberdeen, real close. It takes 6 crawler legs to fix it. I'll pay ya.
Off and away.
Elune be with you.
In the aftermath of the battles at the Well of Eternity, I heard that Amatheron had been destroyed, its people dead, including my love Anaya. I would never have thought, thousands of years later, that memories of Anaya would still haunt my dreams. Wandering the woods of Darkshore in a stupor, I found myself in the ruins of Amatheron, where I saw the haunted spirit of my beloved. She must be freed, but I lack the heart to do it. Her spirit must be destroyed.
Elune light your path. Peace be with you.
Dark forces encroach upon our borders, ancient taints resurface, and new evils emerge to topple the delicate balance of the land. In times of such darkness, we all must be vigilant.
Denadris.
The ruins of Bashalaran to the east are overrun with demonic minions. The sprites and satyrs that have taken up residence in the area feed upon the magical energies of the area, their powers growing from continued exposure. Even with that, I've noticed that there is one shrine they will not approach. On the western side of the ruins, atop a small bluff, a strange blue aura permeates. There must be an explanation to the demon's reluctance. I would like you to investigate it.
Good luck, friend.
Druid, a task I would ask of you. Have you seen the ruins of Amatheron? If not, you will find them on the eastern side of the main road, some ways to the south. Once they were the home of many powerful Highborne. Now they are a testament to the destruction their dabblings produced. I've been told by the sentinels that the spirits of the Highborne persist, and that they wield their ancient magical implements. Those relics must be appropriated so that we might destroy them.
May the stars guide you.
How are you?
Greetings, lass. If you're looking for the best deals you'll find outside Ironforge itself, then you come to the right place.
See you soon.
Off the coast of Darkshore to our north are 2 wrecked ships, the Silver Dawning and the Mist Veil. Some time ago, both ships ran afoul of the blasted Murlocs as I sailed across the vast sea into Aberdeen. They now lie at the bottom of the ocean as trophies for those fiends. Both captains didn't make it out that night, and their logs and other effects are still below in lockboxes. I'd like for you to recover them for us. It would mean a lot to the crew members still around these parts.
Keep your feet on the ground.
Ishnu Allah. Good luck, friend.
Sickness spreads across the Darkshore, gripping the minds and bodies of all it touches. The thistle bears have been hit the hardest by this plague. The once noble beasts are now an instrument of destruction, rabid and frenzied. I may have a cure for this ailment. Take this trap to the forest and lay it on the ground. Any rabid thistle bear that crosses the light shall become docile for a short time. Once the bear is docile, it shall follow you. Lead it back here.
Till next we meet.
I am listening.
I've come to find out how rampant the effects of fell moss are throughout Darkshore. The corruption of Teldrassil and our surrounding lands really concerns the druids of the Cenarian Circle, and all night elves. It is my goal to find out why this has happened and put an end to it.
Go in peace.
Some of my brethren were rescued from a corrupt furbog in Teldrassil, and I vowed to stop any more atrocities before more of our kind are injured. Or worse. I've seen a couple hints of corruption in Darkshore already, but I have yet to find any widespread signs. I think it would be logical if the investigation continued with the furbogs. Would you find one of their camps and return to me if you see any signs of corruption? So, I'll say now that a running theme in Darkshore quests is the corruption of Darkshore. Now, we learn that Teldrassil is corrupted, and I go over this in extensive detail in my History of Teldrassil video, but long story short, we learn that Teldrassil is being corrupted because of a demon lord, Xavius, who is able to corrupt the tree directly. But we also learn that Darkshore is being corrupted, and it is more implied than ever specifically stated in these quests, but I do think it is alluded to that the corruption in Darkshore is specifically coming from Felwood, since Felwood is literally above Darkshore and the source of a lot of its water, since you can just see from the map that all of the rivers flow down from Felwood, and since Felwood is, you know, literally a Felwood, that it's such a massively corrupted land, corrupted by the Burning Legion during the Third War, that now all of the creatures here that are drinking from this water are themselves getting corrupted, but that also there are some agents of the Burning Legion left over that are actively trying to corrupt the Night Elf lands. And we'll see that in quests later, but there are also Satyr that we have to deal with in Darkshore. And I think, conversely, and we'll get into the quests that talk about this as well, but that Teldrassil's corruption also seems to sort of be pushing on Darkshore from the other direction. So Felwood from above, and then Teldrassil from the ocean. I think Teldrassil's corruption is a lot more isolated to Teldrassil, but in the beached animal quests, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, we will learn very shortly that a lot of animals are fleeing from Teldrassil and beaching themselves on the shores of Darkshore, which sort of makes me feel like the ocean around Teldrassil also is suffering from the effects of that corruption. This is a little bit more speculative because the quests don't really spell it out like that for us. We just know that corruption everywhere.
How may I help?
Hail, young night elf. I am Alyssa Starbreeze, and it is my charge to protect Aberdeen from harm. To this end, I sent Balthuel Shadowstrike to observe the strange happenings around the Tower of Alvalax to the northeast. It is past time that he should have returned. I worry that he's encountered some unforeseen danger in the forest. I would be most appreciative if you would find him and see that he's doing well. Buzzbox 827 sits with an eerie silence. A single flashing light indicates that it needs 6 crawler legs to be placed in its holding box. As you place the crawler legs inside the machine, you hear gears begin to grind. Judging from the banging sounds coming from the buzzbox, you believe the crawler legs are being put into their proper place. Soon the machine begins to hum, and you hear a tiny voice calling out from within. Hello? Hello! You fixed it! This is Whizbang, by the way. Thanks a lot. Hey, you wouldn't want to fix another one, would ya? A tiny voice crackles from deep within the machine. Whizbang here. The next buzzbox is north of Aberdeen, on the beach. So, that buzzbox is number 411, and it needs 3 thresher eyes for its repairs. They're just off the coast. The Darkshore threshers. Sorry about that. Just like last time. When you give the buzzbox the goods, it'll spit out your reward. What? No, I'm fine.
Peace be with you.
It is only recently that these creatures started landing on the coast of Darkshore in such alarming numbers. I can't help but think that this is an ill omen of some sort. Recovering a sample of that creature's bones to the south would help us in Darnassus assess this situation.
Goddess watch over you.
I hope the Murloc did not give you much trouble in collecting this for us. I'll be sure to get this on the next hippogriff to Darnassus. The Temple of the Moon has given me some funds to hand out for assistance. Please have some with our thanks. Your success here emboldens me to offer you a chance to aid the Temple of the Moon further, if you are interested.
May the stars guide you.
That beached creature is not an isolated incident here in Darkshore. There are more along the coastline and even in the water. I would like for you to investigate another one that we know of. This one was reported to be in the water due west of Aberdeen, close to a sunken vessel. Return to me with anything that you may recover that would aid our research. Also, in your travels, you may find other creatures. By all means, if you should discover anything, then please bring it to our attention.
Elune light your path. I am honored.
Once you've investigated the creature's remains in the water to the west of here, I should be able to file a proper report with the Temple of the Moon in Darnassus. Perhaps then we'll be closer to discovering the reason why these unfortunate creatures choose to end their lives beached on the coast of Darkshore.
May the stars guide you.
You've been a tremendous help here today. We now have a solid chance at unlocking the mystery of why these creatures choose to beach themselves on the coast of Darkshore. The idea that they might be fleeing the area around Teldrassil is disturbing. Should you come across others in your travels, please let me know. Our research here is but in its infancy. On behalf of the Temple of the Moon, please accept this as thanks for the effort you've given. Thank you. So that's what I said earlier. The line about the idea that they might be fleeing the area around Teldrassil is disturbing. So the quests will never outright say that they are fleeing Teldrassil because it's corrupted, but I do think that is to some extent the implication, especially since there are so many that are beaching themselves on the coast of Darkshore. It feels like they are fleeing from Teldrassil, because that's really the only thing out there. And I'd never really considered that Teldrassil was also affecting the water around it, because I don't think that's ever mentioned in quests beyond this, but given to some extent how much of Darkshore's corruption revolves around the waters here being corrupted by Felwood above, I guess it does actually make sense that Teldrassil being planted in the ocean and corrupted by the Fel and the Void would end up becoming poisonous in some essence to the things living in the waters around it, that maybe not even that it's corrupting the waters, but that the creatures are fleeing from the world tree itself because it's corrupted. So what could I possibly owe the exceedingly special honor of a night elf such as yourself as company? Truly it says much of my current companions. With no offense to my hosts, the noble grells and satyrs, that your presence could be considered an improvement. But please, Do not let my uncivil tongue drive you from the place. It has indeed been many years, decades even, since I had civil accompaniment. If I were to relate the story of my life, I have no doubt it would surpass the limits of your patience. Let us say that mine has been a long and painful life, and this spectral form is perhaps the worst torment of all. I am held here by the means of magic. Though my words may seem disingenuous, I assure you I would be grateful beyond words if you would help me find the means of my imprisonment. A seal binds me, and by examining the earpieces of the sprites and growls, I may find a trace of it. Once I have the earrings, I will cast the spell to search for the whereabouts of the seal that binds me. For centuries I've thought on the freedom destroying the seal would bring to me. Perhaps those centuries have taken a toll upon my mind that I might never recover. Indeed, the growls of Bashalaran do not possess that which I am searching. However, they have come into contact with it recently. Recently, I would reckon that by your time, not mine. Recent for me stretches into the veil of the past, almost another age. If the growls have come into close contact with the seal that binds my eternal prison, I suspect I know the cause. No doubt the seal has come into the possession of this satyr that lead them. I feel strongly that this must be true. One of the satyr must surely possess it. If you can obtain it, you would bring me so close to passing the bars of my prison that tears would come to my eyes. The pillars of this shrine are as the bars of a prison to me. No strength I still possess might break them, and no magic I wield might destroy them. For 1,000 years and more I have stared at them, wondering if at long last I outlived even the stone. Would I be free? Or would it be invisible bars that held me then? It is hard for me to even believe that what I hold now is that which has held me for so long. Let us waste no time. When the seal is destroyed, I might walk the forests of the earth freely again. It was the craft of one of the most powerful of the Highborne that created the seal that formed my prison. In Amatharon, the ruins to the south that are twin to these, persists even today in ancient flame, blue in color. In this flame, the seal could be destroyed. Be wary in the ruins.
I am honored.
To the east you will find the ruins of Amatharon. It is now inhabited by the restless spirits of the Highborne that once dwelt within its walls. But once it was a place where the servants of Ajar freely practiced their powerful magics. I was sent to explore the ruins and came across 2 large tablets scrawled with the stories of Amatharon in its fall. While I read the ruins, I was accosted by the spirits and fled. Please, if you can, venture to the ruins and decipher the tablets in my place.
Farewell.
Finally, my favorite quest. The Lay of Amatharon. Long had the children of the stars dwelled upon the banks of the shimmering waters of the eternal well. To all was known that Elune, light of the eternal twilight, aspect and goddess of the moon, dwelt within its waters at such time that she rested from her works. Upon the shores of the well did the children of the stars, favored of Elune, build their homes, even as their gaze was trained ever skyward into the moonlit night. Though there were many towns and places of habitation constructed upon the lake shore, Amatharon and Bashalaran were the foremost, having the touch of Ajara, the Kaldorai's beloved queen, in their creation. Her favored servitors, those of the Highborne, she brought to the twin towns to reside, and to govern them she placed Athricus Narasin, though it would be that he would spend most of his days in his tower of Althalax, some ways removed of the towns. His second, a mage known of his prowess in the arcane arts as much as with his physical abilities, was Asterion, who lived among the people of Bashalaran, and went many times to Amatheron to see the needs and wants of its people. And so it was, upon the shores of the Well of Eternity, that twin towns grew and prospered while the world beneath the stars fell slowly to madness. I have been waiting to talk about this. So this is one of my favorite things when it comes to Highborne lore. The first thing I want to point out is that Ajara personally handpicked a Highborne named Athricus Narasin to serve as the governor of these twin cities. We will see Athricus Narasin later on in classic quests, but you actually learn in Legion that he is originally from Suramar, and we get to meet his brother in the Warlock Class Hall quest campaign, and a female night elf who may or may not be his sister. Her relationship to him is never specified. Could be a sister, could be a cousin, unclear. But after Thalisra is ousted from Suramar as the first Arcanist, it's that Narasin, I forget her first name, but it's her, I presume his sister, who gets chosen as the next first Arcanist under Elisand. So Athricus Narasin came all the way from Suramar, because Ajara personally handpicked him, to rule over these towns. And I think that's a really cool bit of connective lore that, like, we get a callback to in Legion, and I just eat that up. The other thing I want to point out in this tablet is that it says these towns were built on the shores of the Well of Eternity. We are literally on the complete opposite side from the Well of Eternity as we can possibly get. So the Well of Eternity no longer exists. It exploded during the Sundering and is basically what caused the world to sunder, and then it turned into the Maelstrom, which just exists between Kalimdor and Eastern Kingdoms. And I could probably spend a good 15 minutes on this topic, breaking it all down. I'm not going to be that intense. But I will say, I think this is something that at this point has been retconned. I don't think that these twin cities were built on the shores of the Well of Eternity because they are actually nowhere near it. There's a few potential ways to reconcile this, but really, I don't think any of it works at all. I think at one time it could have been possible to say that Darkshore was located on the shores of the Well of Eternity, and then in the exploding of the world, that it basically got shifted around and ended up where it is now. I don't really think that's the case, because when we got the maps in Chronicle, it seems to me that none of the land masses actually moved. It's just that the land that had been there sunk underwater, that everything is pretty much where it used to be. Because if you overlay the Chronicle maps, the pre-Sundering maps from Chronicle on top of, like, current game maps, everything is pretty much about almost in the same exact position that it used to be. We do know that the only cities on the shore of the Well of Eternity were Zinajari and Galhara, which is mentioned in the War of the Ancients trilogy, and then sort of never again, probably because it got absolutely obliterated during the Sundering. There's also more that I could say at large about the description of the Well of Eternity and Zinajari. I think Zinajari has been depicted no less than 4 separate times in media. One of them in the Well of Eternity 5-man dungeon in Cataclysm, once in the Ajara Warbringer short, which is the most recent and therefore I would think the most canon depiction of it, once in the War of the Ancients trilogy, and also in Chronicle art / sort of the Chronicle maps, and it is actually surprisingly inconsistent as to whether the capital city of Zinajari was built on the shores of the Well of Eternity, if it was built around the Well of Eternity, and this sort of depends on how that piece of media decides to depict the size of the well, because in the 5-man dungeon, it's pretty tiny, probably for game mechanics reasons, I would assume. Whereas in Ajara's Warbringer short, it's massive. It's basically like a Great Lake of its own, which is pretty consistent with the War of the Ancients trilogy, since that's the book that says their cities on the complete opposite shoreline from Zinajari. But there's also art in Chronicle that sort of places Zinajari on the well. And this part is, I'm completely pulling this out of nowhere, totally speculative, but I've always sort of wondered if maybe to some extent it was a Darnassus-like situation where they built Zinajari on and around the well and had like canals and stuff. But I don't think that's actually the case. I'm gonna say that probably the most accurate depiction of Zinajari in the Well of Eternity is in the Ajara Warbringers short. And this is all a very long way of saying, no, despite what this tablet says, I don't think that these cities were built on the shores of the Well of Eternity. I think that has actually just been retconned. And then this is the fall of Amatheron. The earth trembled as the ancient trees in the enchanted forest were uprooted and toppled. The groves and glades tended by the sons and daughters of Cenarius, and the stone towers of the children of the stars were brought to the rolling ground. There was our queen, radiant even in the desperation and the chaos that was the battles. The enchanted sky changed colors with the discharge of magic, with the explosions that threatened to tear the world asunder. Brother fought brother, chosen fought blessed. It was not all the highborn that fought. Some stood transfixed as the madness took them. Mighty cities and humble towns alike were felled around them. In Amatheron all was in ruins, its people clinging to the ground as though that might spare them from the destruction. It was then that Athricus Norasin, favored of Ajara, appeared to guide them to safety. With a spell he could protect them, he would say, while around them brother and sister, father and mother perished. They would have life eternal, and have naught to fear from the sundering that was to come. You know, speculatively speaking, I feel like Highborne ruins are often either occupied by the ghosts of the Highborne that used to live there, or Naga, who also incidentally used to live in those ruins, I guess. And, I sort of wonder, piggybacking off of what happened with Ajara and Ferondis in Legion, that she technically, like, cursed all of the Highborne there to live as spirits. If the magical energies from the explosion of the well basically wiped all of the Highborne out, but then preserved them as ghosts, like that these are just magical echoes that persist. And I think there's precedent for that, though really unpacking why that's the case requires getting into Shadowlands lore, which no one really wants to do. But it's really a thing that requires, like, a whole unpacking of its own, I would say. Okay, well, I guess while we wait for this respawn to happen, fun fact about Anaya Dawnrunner is she is one of the few rare night elves whose last name is connected to, like, the sun or the day. And we learned in Chronicle that Dathramar Sunstrider, who was the original king of the High Elves, but before that was one of Ajara's highborn servitors, that his last name, Sunstrider, was sort of something of an anomaly among the Night Elves who favor moon-related last names, and that Sunstrider was symbolic of their delving into the unknown. And I think there's a few other Night Elves with sun-related surnames. There's like a Night Elf in the Temple of Elune in Darnassus, though I don't remember off the top of my head what her last name is. Sunblade, maybe? But I think, again, sort of headcanon, because we have like 3 examples total. I think that sun-related last names were probably more common among the Highborn, but especially after, because when the Highborn exiles left to go to the Eastern Kingdoms and basically ended up becoming the High Elves over so many generations, that they renamed themselves, basically abandoned the moon-focused culture of the elves and instead decided to worship the sun. Though whether that has any religious significance is somewhat unclear at this point.
Ishnu Allah.
We have few records from the time around the War of the Ancients, especially near the destruction of the Well of Eternity. Given the upheaval and cataclysmic events that were taking place, it is no big surprise. Thank you. With your help, my work here is finished, and I will be able to deliver a full report to the Circle. There's another quest we get in Cataclysm around Vashir. There's both a Horde and Alliance version of it, and the text is the same, but in the Horde version it's Blood Elf sending you, who's asking about, to learn their ancestry, basically, since the Blood Elves came from, the High Elves came from the Highborne. And they also say in that quest that we don't really have that many records from before the War of the Ancients because so much of it was destroyed in the Sundering. And you go to the Queldormer Gardens in Vashir and look at the statues of a few prominent Night Elves, including Queen Ajara, Lady Vosh's mother Lestharia Vosh, High Priestess Soralin, some ranger dude, and when you go back, the quest giver tells you that they had no idea half these people existed because they just completely lost all the records. And that's a very reoccurring theme when it comes to Night Elf lore and Highborne ruins, is that we don't really know much of what is up with them because pretty much all the history surrounding that has been destroyed or lost to time. Because I know in Cata Darkshore there's those other ruins, Lunestra I think it's called, that just sort of spawn out of nowhere due to the cataclysm. I think the same thing happens in Stone Talon too. There's another Highborne ruin there that's unearthed and it's like, oh my god, we had literally no idea these existed. They've just been covered up for, 10,000 years or whatever. I'm freed. I can now see with my own eyes the changes that have come to our world. Only bits and pieces have I known. To think that when I last walked freely, the well still stood, and the Highborne held court with Ajara, our beloved queen. I sense that my jailer, my former master, Athracus, still lives. Already my feelings of hopelessness will give way into thoughts of vengeance. I gotta say, it's weird to me that after we turn this quest in, we literally never see this guy again. And we as the player character are the ones who deal with Athracus and Harass, and a slight spoiler alert, that happens in Ashenvale quests, but we will start learning more about him in some Darkshore quests.
What brings you here?
If only the tools of their undoing could have been destroyed in the cataclysm that destroyed our world. Nonetheless, we must do what we can to ensure that the horrors of our past are not repeated in the future.
May the stars guide you.
What is surely a figment of my imagination, I feel as though I can almost feel the taint of foul highborn magic upon them. I will have these destroyed, so that their long-dormant evil might never be released again.
Del Nadris.
Greetings.
With a great sorrow in my heart, I followed the Shondo storm rage into hibernation, and took my sorrow to my dreams, sleeping for the passing of thousands of years.
Be careful.
Thank you. Perhaps it would have been better if I had done it myself. But even after these thousands of years, I could not bear to raise my hand against my beloved. Please, I would be alone with my grief.
Goddess, watch over you.
Anaya? Do my eyes deceive me? Is it really you? The ages have been cruel to you and I, my love. But be assured it is, and at long last we are reunited. That the fates should be so cruel as to permit us only this after 1,000 years apart. 10,000. Do you hate me, my love? That I was forced to destroy your living form, that your spirit be released from unhappy bondage? Let it not trouble your heart, beloved. You have freed me from slavery, and for that I love you all the more. Sadly, even this must be cut short. The ties that bind me to this world weaken and pull me away. No, Anaya! Anaya! Don't leave me! Please! Farewell, Cerelian, until we are joined once again. Why is this the most emotional quest ever? Anaya's soft voice trails away into the mists. Know that I love you always. Oh, my love. How will I find the strength to face the ages of the world without you by my side? Anywho, so this quest gets a really nice cap-off in Shadowlands because we see Anaya's spirit in Ardenweald, and I'm pretty sure she gets reunited with Cerelian. Okay, so I misremembered slightly. They never actually do reunite, but Cerelian does pop up in the Amirdrasil epilogue in Dragonflight, when Tyrande leads the ceremony to bless the waters under Amirdrasil and create a new moonwell. She asks for offerings. And Cerelian actually offers up Anaya's pendant and says that it's been weighing on him pretty much ever since we first did this quest. He does mention that he cannot be reunited with her, but hopes that her spirit can live on. So maybe one day in the future, like when he ends up in the Shadowlands or something, they'll finally be reunited. And on that note, I'm going to end part 1 here. Actually really happy that I got to just mostly focus on all of the Highborne lore today. Goodness knows that I could talk about that for hours, and I probably will. But gonna pick up with more quests next time. I have a feeling this is gonna be a 3-part series. Get through more of the Buzzbox stuff. I want to talk a whole bunch more about the beached creatures and get a little bit more into the corruption that Darkshore is suffering from. So, thank you for joining me for the first part of my Night Elf World tour. I'm actually so excited to get through all of it, not just the rest of Darkshore, but I think after this I'm going to go on to Ashenvale, Desalos, Feralis, Winterspring, Felwood. Might for now skip Stone Talon because I'm doing this on Season of Discovery and the XP boost is making things... I'm over-leveling a lot. So, before I ramble too much, thank you so much for joining me for the beginning of this Night Elf World tour, and I hope to see you for Darkshore Part 2. This is like truly a defining moment for 8-year-old me. Where is Anaya? Oh, she's dead! I see her! I don't want to do the fishing quest. Oh my god, not an Ashenvale breadcrumb quest already! No regrets. No regrets. Some regret. Some regret. I did it! I died, but I did it! A grievous error has been made. That turned gray! Oh no, not again. I'm leaving. Excuse me. Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm having the worst time. I know too much. I just get to talk about Highborne lore in the first part of this series. Let's go!